Lysandra Kade stood at the helm of the rebel ship Phoenix, her eyes fixed on the holographic display projecting the convoy's path. The room buzzed with the hum of machinery and the low murmurs of her crew, each member focused on their tasks. The supply convoy, guarded by a small detachment of UIC drones, was just minutes away. "All units, prepare for intercept," Lysandra commanded, her voice steady and authoritative. She turned to Elle, who was seated at the ship's controls. "Elle, are we ready?" Elle gave a curt nod, her fingers dancing over the console. "Engines are primed and weapons are hot. We're good to go, Commander." Lysandra's gaze shifted to Dr. Seraphine Calder, who was monitoring the medical bay. "Seraphine, any last-minute updates?" Dr. Calder shook her head. "Medical team is on standby. Let's bring everyone back safely." With a final glance around the bridge, Lysandra activated the ship's comms. "Rebellion fleet, this is Commander Kade. On my mark, we move in. Remember, our objective is to secure the supplies and avoid unnecessary casualties. Let's show them what we're made of." The countdown began. Lysandra could feel the tension in the air, a mixture of fear and determination. The UIC had ruled with an iron fist for too long, and the people of Theron were suffering. This raid was more than just a mission, it was a symbol of resistance. 3, 2, 1, engage! The Phoenix surged forward, followed closely by a fleet of smaller rebel ships. The convoy came into view, its metallic hulls gleaming against the backdrop of the stars. The UIC drones immediately detected the incoming threat and moved to intercept, but the rebels were ready. "Elle, take out those drones," Lysandra ordered. Elle's hands moved with practiced precision, targeting the drones with pinpoint accuracy. Laser fire erupted, cutting through the vacuum of space. The first drone exploded in a burst of light, followed by another. The rebels weaved through the debris, their ships maneuvering with agile grace. "Enemy defenses are down," Elle reported. "We're clear to approach the convoy." "Good work," Lysandra replied. "All units, move in and secure the cargo." The rebel ships latched onto the convoy, boarding parties quickly breaching the hulls to access the valuable supplies within. Lysandra led one of the boarding teams, her blaster at the ready. They moved swiftly through the corridors, encountering minimal resistance. The UIC soldiers they did encounter were quickly subdued, the element of surprise working in the rebels' favor. As they reached the cargo hold, Lysandra's comm crackled to life. "Commander, this is Voss. We've secured the medical supplies." "Understood," Lysandra responded. "Load them up and prepare for extraction. We need to be out of here before reinforcements arrive." The team worked efficiently, transferring crates of supplies to the Phoenix. Lysandra kept a watchful eye on the proceedings, her mind already anticipating the UIC's next move. The raid had gone smoothly so far, but she knew better than to let her guard down. "Commander, we've got company," Elle's voice cut through the comms. Lysandra's heart skipped a beat. "How many?" "2 UIC frigates approaching fast. We've got about 5 minutes before they're in range." "All units, expedite the loading process," Lysandra commanded. "We need to be gone before those frigates get here." The pace quickened, rebels moving with urgency as the supplies were loaded onto the ships. Lysandra could feel the pressure mounting, the seconds ticking away far too quickly. "Elle, prep the ship for immediate departure," Lysandra said, her voice calm despite the chaos. "Already on it, Commander," Elle replied. As the last crate was secured, Lysandra gave the order. "All units, disengage and return to base, now!" The rebel ships detached from the convoy, engines roaring to life as they made a hasty retreat. The UIC frigates loom, on the horizon, but the rebels were already moving out of range. The Phoenix led the charge, navigating through the stars with practiced ease. Lysandra allowed herself a moment of relief as the rebel fleet slipped away, leaving the UIC frigates behind. The mission had been a success, but she knew this was only the beginning. "Good work, everyone," she said over the comms. "Let's get these supplies back to base and prepare for the next phase." As the Phoenix continued its journey, Lysandra's thoughts turned to the future. The raid had been a small victory, but it was a spark, and from that spark, a flame of rebellion would grow, spreading across the galaxy. For now, they had hope, and that was enough. The rebel base buzzed with activity as the Phoenix and its fleet returned with the captured supplies. Lysandra Kade stepped off the ramp of the ship, her eyes scanning the bustling scene. The crates of medical supplies and rations were already being unloaded and distributed to the various sectors of the base. She felt a surge of pride at her team's efficiency, but also a lingering tension. The UIC would not take this loss lightly. "Commander Kade, we need you in the war room," a young rebel soldier informed her, snapping a salute. Lysandra nodded, making her way through the base. The underground facility, hidden beneath the rugged mountains of Theron, served as the heart of the Aegis Rebellion. It was a stark contrast to the sterile and oppressive environments of UIC-controlled areas, filled instead with the rough-and-ready spirit of those fighting for their freedom. In the war room, the core leadership of the rebellion was gathered around a large holographic table. Maps and tactical displays flickered with real-time data. Lysandra took her place at the head of the table, joining Dr. Seraphine Calder, L, and a few other key figures. "Excellent work on the raid," Dr. Calder began, her voice calm and measured. "These supplies will make a significant difference." Lysandra gave a curt nod. "We did well, but we can't rest on our laurels. The UIC will retaliate, and we need to be prepared." Elle leaned forward, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "I've been working on a few upgrades for our ships. If we can implement them in time, we'll have a better chance against their frigates next time." "Do what you need to," Lysandra replied. "We have to stay one step ahead." Before they could delve further into their plans, the doors to the war room slid open, and a tall figure stepped inside. Captain Darius Voss, dressed in the stark, clean lines of his UIC uniform, surveyed the room with a stern expression. "Commander Kade," Voss said, his voice cold and formal. "It's been a while." The room fell silent, tension crackling in the air. Lysandra met his gaze evenly. "Captain Voss, I see the UIC decided to send one of their best to deal with us." "I've been tasked with restoring order on Theron," Voss replied, his tone measured. "You know this rebellion is futile, Lysandra. You can't win against the coalition." "Maybe not," Lysandra said, her voice hardening, "but we can make them bleed, and we can give people hope." Voss's eyes flickered with a hint of something, regret, perhaps, or a memory of their shared past. "Hope won't be enough to save you." Before the conversation could escalate further, the room's comm system crackled to life. "Commander Kade, urgent message from Sector 4. Lysandra turned to the comm panel, pressing a button to receive the transmission. A frazzled voice came through, barely audible over the sound of gunfire. "Commander, we're under attack. UIC forces have found our position." Lysandra's heart sank. "Hold your position. We're sending reinforcements," she said, then cut the transmission. Turning to her team, she barked out orders. "Elle, get a squad ready. Seraphine, prepare the medbay for casualties. Voss, if you're going to help, now's the time to prove." Captain Voss hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'll do what I can." As the team moved out, Lysandra couldn't shake the feeling that the situation was spiraling out of control. The UIC's response had been swift and brutal, and their resources were already stretched thin. Elle rallied a squad of rebels, and together they boarded a transport ship bound for Sector 4. Lysandra stayed behind to coordinate the defense from the war room, her mind racing through the possibilities. If they could hold off the UIC forces, they might still have a chance to regroup and strengthen their defenses. The transport ship touched down in Sector 4, where chaos reigned. UIC soldiers, clad in their imposing black armor, were pushing the rebels back. Explosions rocked the ground, and smoke filled the air. "Move, move, move," Elle shouted, leading her squad into the fray. The rebels engaged the UIC soldiers with fierce determination, using every bit of cover they could find. Elle's piloting skills translated well to combat, her movements quick and precise. Meanwhile, back at the base, Lysandra monitored the battle from the war room. "Talon, I need you to get eyes on the enemy's position," she said into her comm. Talon Jax, who had been quietly observing from the shadows, nodded. "On it, Commander." Talon's infiltration skills allowed him to slip through the battlefield unnoticed. He relayed crucial information back to Lysandra, helping her coordinate the rebels' counterattacks. Despite their best efforts, the UIC forces were relentless. Just when it seemed they might be overwhelmed, reinforcements arrived from another sector, led by a grizzled veteran named Eric. His presence bolstered the rebels' morale, and they began to push the UIC forces back. As the tide of battle turned, Lysandra's comm crackled to life again. "Commander, we've identified the enemy commander. It's Major Kane, one of Voss's top lieutenants. Lysandra's eyes narrowed. L, target Major Kane. We take him out, and the rest might fall back. L nodded, relaying the order to her squad. With coordinated precision, they managed to flank Kane's position. In a daring move, L herself charged forward, drawing Kane's fire while the rest of the squad moved in. The fight was brutal, but L's agility and quick thinking paid off. With a final, well-placed shot, Major Kane fell. The UIC soldiers, disoriented and leaderless, began to retreat. Sector 4 is secure, L reported, her voice tired but triumphant. Lysandra allowed herself a small sigh of relief. Good work, everyone. Get back to base and regroup. This isn't over yet. As the transport ship returned, the rebels began to count their losses and tend to the wounded. Lysandra knew they had won a small victory, but the larger war was still ahead. Captain Voss approached her, his expression unreadable. You fought well today, he said quietly. So did you, Lysandra replied. But this changes nothing. We're still enemies. For now, Voss agreed, but maybe one day we won't have to be. As the sun set over the rebel base, Lysandra pondered Voss's words. The lines between friend and foe were becoming increasingly blurred, and the cost of their struggle was mounting. But she couldn't afford to waver. The fight for freedom was far from over, and she would see it through to the end. The quiet of the rebel base at night was a stark contrast to the chaos of battle. Lysandra Kade walked through the dimly lit corridors, her mind heavy with the weight of their recent victory and the losses that came with it. She made her way to the strategy room, where Dr. Seraphine Calder was waiting for her. How are the wounded? Lysandra asked, taking a seat at the table. Dr. Calder sighed, removing her glasses and rubbing her temples. We're managing. Thanks to the supplies we secured, we have enough to treat everyone for now. But it's only a matter of time before we run out again. Sandra nodded, her thoughts already racing ahead. We'll need to secure more resources, and we need to find a way to disrupt the UIC's supply lines. We can't keep fighting them head-on forever. Before Dr. Calder could respond, the door to the strategy room opened, and Talon Jack stepped inside. His eyes flickered with a cold intensity that sent a shiver down Lysandra's spine. Talon had been invaluable with his intelligence gathering, but his motives remained a mystery. Commander, Talon said, his voice smooth and calm. I've gathered some information that might interest you. Lysandra gestured for him to continue. Talon pulled out a small data drive and plugged it into the central console. A holographic display lit up, showing detailed schematics of a UIC research facility. This facility, Talon began, is one of the UIC's top-secret projects. They're developing new weapons and technology that could tip the balance of power in their favor. If we can destroy it, we'll not only cripple their operations, but also gain valuable intel. Lysandra studied the schematics, her mind working through the possibilities. This is exactly what we need, but it's heavily fortified. We'll need a solid plan and the element of surprise. I can get you in, Talon said, his gaze unwavering. I've worked at this facility before. I know its weaknesses. Dr. Calder frowned. And why should we trust you? You've been with us for a short time, and we still know very little about you. Talon met her gaze without flinching. You don't have to trust me, but you need me, and if you want to win this war, you'll take every advantage you can get. Lysandra weighed her options. Talon was right. They needed every edge they could find, but the risk was enormous. One misstep, and they could lose everything. We'll do it, Lysandra decided. But you're coming with us, Talon. If this is a trap, you'll be the first to pay the price. Talon nodded, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Understood, Commander. The plan was set into motion quickly. L, still recovering from the battle in Sector 4, insisted on being part of the mission. Her technical expertise would be crucial for navigating the facility's security systems. Lysandra, Talon, and a small team of elite rebels prepared for the assault. As they approached the facility under the cover of darkness, Lysandra couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in her gut. Talon led the way, his movements confident and precise. The facility loomed ahead, its sterile, imposing structure a testament to the UIC's power. We'll enter through the maintenance tunnels, Talon instructed. They won't be expecting an attack from below. The team followed him into the tunnels, moving silently through the shadows. The air was thick with tension, every creak and echo amplifying their nerves. Talon's knowledge of the facility was undeniable, but Lysandra remained vigilant, watching for any signs of betrayal. They emerged in a storage area, undetected. Talon motioned for them to hold back as he disabled a security camera with practiced ease. "This way," he whispered, leading them deeper into the heart of the facility. Elle worked quickly, hacking into the mainframe and shutting down the internal security systems. "We're in," she said, her voice hushed but triumphant. "They won't know we're here until it's too late." Lysandra signaled for the team to move out. They split into groups, planting explosives at key points throughout the facility. The mission was going smoothly, almost too smoothly. As Lysandra and Talon made their way to the central lab, the hair on the back of her neck stood up. Something was wrong. She drew her blaster, scanning the area for any threats. "We're almost there," Talon said, his voice steady. "Just through this door." They entered the lab, and Lysandra's worst fears were realized. Standing in the center of the room, flanked by UIC soldiers, was Major Kane. His expression was one of smug satisfaction. "Welcome, Commander Kade," Kane said, his voice dripping with mockery. "We've been expecting you." Talon stepped forward, his demeanor calm. "Major Kane," he acknowledged, "as promised." Lysandra's heart sank. "You betrayed us." Talon's expression softened, a flicker of regret in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Lysandra. I had no choice." Before she could react, the UIC soldiers moved in, disarming her and securing the rest of the team. Lysandra's mind raced, trying to find a way out of this trap. "You see, Commander," Kane continued, "we've been aware of your plans for some time, and thanks to Talon's cooperation, we now have you exactly where we want you." Lysandra clenched her fists, anger and frustration boiling within her. "This isn't over, Kane. The rebellion will continue, with or without me." Kane chuckled. "Perhaps. But for now, you'll be our guest. Take them away." As the soldiers escorted them to a holding area, Lysandra glanced at Talon. His face was a mask of indifference, but she could see the conflict in his eyes. There was more to his betrayal than met the eye, and she intended to find out what it was. Locked in a cell with her team, Lysandra began to formulate a plan. They had come too far to be stopped now. The UIC had won this battle, but the war was far from over, and with every setback, their resolve only grew stronger. Lysandra Kade would not be broken, and neither would the Aegis Rebellion. Lysandra paced the small cell, her mind racing. The betrayal stung deeply, but she couldn't afford to dwell on it. Her team needed her to be strong, to find a way out of this mess. Elle, sitting on the edge of a cot, was already working on a plan, her sharp mind focused on the challenge at hand. "We need to get to the control room," Elle said, her voice a determined whisper. "If we can access the mainframe, we can override the security systems and create a diversion." Dr. Seraphine Calder nodded, her calm demeanor a steadying presence. "We also need to find out what other secrets this facility holds. There might be something here that can help us turn the tide of the war." Lysandra stopped pacing and looked at her team. "Agreed. But first, we need to get out of this cell." Before they could formulate a plan, the cell door slid open, and Talon Jack stood there, flanked by 2 UIC guards. He stepped inside, his expression unreadable. "You have 10 minutes, Talon said, his voice low. "Make it count." Lysandra's eyes narrowed. "Why should we trust you now?" Talon glanced at the guards, then back at Lysandra. "Because I'm giving you a chance to escape. I've disabled the security cameras and given you access codes to the control room. If you want to get out of here alive, you'll follow my lead." Elle stood up, her eyes blazing with anger. "Why should we believe you after what you did?" Talon's face softened slightly, a hint of regret in his eyes. "Because I had no choice. Major Kane had my family, but now that they're safe, I can help you." Lysandra studied him for a moment, then made a decision. "All right, but if you betray us again, there won't be a third chance." Talon nodded, his expression serious. "Understood. Follow me." The group moved swiftly through the corridors, Talon leading the way. They encountered minimal resistance, thanks to Talon's insider knowledge and the access codes he provided. Soon, they reached the control room. Elle immediately went to work, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "I'm in, shutting down security systems and opening the main gate. We have a limited window before they realize what's happening." Lysandra turned to Dr. Calder. "Seraphine, See if you can download any useful data from their servers. We need all the intel we can get. Dr. Calder nodded and began accessing the facility's database. As she worked, the rest of the team kept watch, ready for any sign of trouble. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, Dr. Calder spoke up. I've got it. They were conducting experiments on Theron's population, trying to develop a new kind of biological weapon. This could be the key to turning public opinion against the UIC. Lysandra's expression hardened. Good, let's get out of here and make sure this information gets into the right hands. As they prepared to leave, alarms started blaring throughout the facility. The element of surprise was gone. We need to move now, Talon urged, leading them through a series of back corridors to avoid the incoming guards. They burst out of the facility and into the night, the cool air a sharp contrast to the sterile environment they had just escaped. UIC forces were already mobilizing, and the rebels had to fight their way to the extraction point. Blaster fire lit up the darkness as Lysandra and her team engaged the UIC soldiers. Talon fought alongside them, his skills and knowledge proving invaluable. Despite their best efforts, the odds were overwhelming. We're not going to make it at this rate, Elle shouted over the noise of battle. We need a distraction. Lysandra scanned the battlefield and spotted a fuel depot nearby. Elle, can you hit that from here? Elle grinned, her eyes gleaming. Watch me. She aimed her blaster and fired a precise shot. The fuel depot exploded in a massive fireball, creating chaos and confusion among the UIC forces. Using the distraction, the rebels made a break for the extraction point, where a transport ship was waiting. As they boarded the ship, Lysandra took a last look at the burning facility. They had managed to escape with their lives and vital information, but the cost had been high. Get us out of here, Lysandra ordered, and the ship lifted off, heading back to the rebel base. Back at the base, Lysandra gathered her team in the war room. They were battered and exhausted, but victorious. Good work, everyone, she said, her voice filled with pride. We've dealt a significant blow to the UIC, and we've uncovered vital information that could change the course of this war. Dr. Calder placed the data drive on the table. We need to analyze this and get it to our allies. The truth about the UIC's experiments needs to be exposed. Elle nodded in agreement. This is just the beginning. We need to hit them harder and make sure they can't recover. Lysandra turned to Talon, who stood apart from the group. You've proven yourself tonight, but trust will take time to rebuild. Talon met her gaze. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes to earn it. As the team began to plan their next move, Lysandra felt a renewed sense of hope. The UIC was powerful, but they had shown that it wasn't invincible. The rebellion was growing stronger, and with the truth on their side, they had a real chance at victory. The war was far from over, but the spark of rebellion had ignited into a flame that would not be easily extinguished. The rebel base hummed with a sense of urgency and anticipation. The information retrieved from the UIC facility had revealed the extent of their heinous experiments, and now it was time to act. Lysandra Kade stood at the center of the war room, surrounded by her key officers and strategists, including Elle, Dr. Seraphine Calder, and Talon Jax. The holographic display showed the layout of the main UIC research lab on Theron, their next target. This is it, Lysandra began, her voice steady but charged with determination. We know the UIC is developing a new biological weapon here. If we can destroy this lab and expose their experiments, we'll deal a crippling blow to their operations and sway public opinion in our favor. Elle nodded, her face set in a determined expression. I've reviewed the schematics. The lab is heavily fortified, but I've identified weak points we can exploit. Dr. Calder added, we need to be cautious. The biological agents they're working on could be incredibly dangerous if released. Containment will be crucial. Lysandra turned to Talon, who had been instrumental in providing the intel. Talon, you'll lead the infiltration team. Your knowledge of their security protocols will be vital. Talon nodded, his demeanor focused and resolute. Understood. We'll get in and out before they know what hit them. The plan was set into motion quickly. The rebels divided into two teams, one to infiltrate the lab and plant explosives, and the other to provide a diversion and cover their escape. Lysandra, Talon, and a select group of elite operatives comprised the infiltration team, while Elle and Dr. Calder led the support squad. As night fell, the rebels moved out, their transport ships gliding silently through the darkness. The lab's exterior was a fortress of steel and concrete, guarded by automated turrets and patrolling drones. Talon guided them to a hidden maintenance entrance, bypassing the main defenses. Inside the lab, the team moved swiftly and silently. Talon disabled security cameras and sensors, allowing them to advance undetected. They split up to plant explosives at key structural points, each member working with precision and speed. Lysandra and Talon reached the main research chamber, a vast room filled with cutting-edge technology and containment units. Inside the units, grotesque biological specimens floated in viscous fluid, the results of the UIC's twisted experiments. "This is where they create their weapons," Talon muttered, his voice tinged with disgust. Lysandra nodded, setting the charges with grim determination. "Let's make sure they can't use this place again." As they worked, a sudden alarm blared through the facility. Talon cursed under his breath. "They've discovered us. We need to move now." The team regrouped and made a break for the exit, but UIC soldiers were already converging on their position. Blaster fire erupted, and the rebels returned fire, fighting their way through the narrow corridors. We need that diversion now," Lysandra shouted into her comm. "On it," Elle's voice crackled back. Moments later, explosions rocked the exterior of the lab as Elle's team engaged the UIC forces outside, drawing attention away from the infiltrators. The rebels pushed forward, but the resistance was fierce. Talon led the way, his combat skills honed from years of experience. Despite their efforts, the UIC soldiers began to overwhelm them. "We're not going to make it at this rate," Talon shouted over the din of battle. Lysandra scanned the chaotic scene and spotted a secondary exit. "This way, move." The team fought their way to the secondary exit, barely managing to hold off the pursuing UIC forces. As they burst through the door, they found themselves in a narrow alleyway behind the lab. "Head for the extraction point," Lysandra ordered. They sprinted through the alley, the sound of blaster fire and explosions echoing behind them. As they neared the extraction point, a UIC patrol cut them off, forcing them into another firefight. "We're outnumbered," one of the rebels shouted, panic edging into his voice. Lysandra fired back, her movements precise and controlled. "Hold the line. We can't let them pin us down here." Just when it seemed they might be overwhelmed, a familiar voice crackled through their comms. "Hang tight, Commander. We're coming in hot." A rebel gunship swooped down, its heavy blasters tearing through the UIC patrol. Elle and her team had arrived, providing much-needed support. The remaining UIC soldiers scattered under the onslaught, giving the infiltrators a chance to escape. "Everyone, on board," Elle shouted, covering their retreat. The rebels scrambled onto the gunship, which lifted off the ground and sped away from the burning lab. As they soared through the night sky, Lysandra looked back at the facility. The explosives they had planted detonated in a series of thunderous blasts, reducing the lab to rubble. Back at the rebel base, the mood was one of triumph mixed with exhaustion. The mission had been a success, but the cost had been high. Lysandra stood before her assembled team, her expression both proud and somber. "We did it," she said, her voice carrying through the room. "We struck a blow against the UIC that they won't soon forget, and we exposed their atrocities for the galaxy to see." Dr. Calder stepped forward, holding up a data drive. "The information we recovered will be invaluable. The UIC's reputation will be shattered once this gets out." Elle grinned, her eyes gleaming with fierce determination. "This is just the beginning. We've shown them that we're a force to be reckoned with." Lysandra nodded, feeling the weight of their struggle, but also the strength of their unity. "We've come a long way, and we have a long way to go, but we will fight, and we will win. For Theron, and for all those who suffer under the UIC's tyranny." The room erupted in cheers, a wave of defiant hope washing over the rebels. As Lysandra looked around at her team, she knew that their resolve had only grown stronger. The war was far from over, but the flame of rebellion burned brighter than ever. The atmosphere in the rebel base was electric as news of the successful raid spread. The destruction of the UIC research lab had not only crippled their operations, but also uncovered damning evidence of their inhumane experiments. Lysandra Kade knew this was a pivotal moment. It was time to take the war to the next level, by winning the battle for hearts and minds. In the war room, Lysandra stood before a holographic display, reviewing the footage and data Dr. Seraphine Calder had extracted from the lab. Elle, Talon, and other key members of the rebellion were gathered around the table. "This is our chance," Lysandra said, her voice firm. "We have proof of the UIC's atrocities. If we can broadcast this to the galaxy, we can turn public opinion against them and gain more support for our cause." Elle nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "I've already started working on a transmission. We need to make sure it's untraceable and reaches as many people as possible." Talon leaned in, his expression serious. "The UIC will try to discredit us and suppress the information. We need a strategy to counter their propaganda." Dr. Calder added, "We also need to be prepared for their retaliation. The UIC won't take this lying down." Lysandra considered their words. "Agreed. We'll coordinate with our allies on other planets to ensure the message spreads quickly and can't be easily silenced." Elle, prioritize the transmission. Talon, work on contingency plans in case they launch a counteroffensive. Seraphine, continue analyzing the data for any additional leverage we can use. As they dispersed to carry out their tasks, Lysandra felt a mix of hope and apprehension. The next few days would be crucial. If they could sway public opinion, they could galvanize more support and potentially turn the tide of the war. The transmission went live 3 days later. It was broadcasted across multiple channels and encrypted to avoid detection. The footage showed the gruesome experiments conducted by the UIC, interspersed with testimonies from survivors and captured soldiers who had defected to the rebellion. Lysandra herself appeared, speaking directly to the camera, her voice filled with passion and determination. "People of the galaxy, we can no longer stand by and let the United Interstellar Coalition continue their reign of terror. They have committed unspeakable atrocities, and it's time to fight back. Join us, support us, and together we can overthrow this tyrannical regime." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages of support poured in from across the galaxy. Protests erupted on several UIC-controlled planets, and de-resistance movements began to coalesce around the rebellion's banner. The UIC, caught off guard by the sheer scale of the backlash, scrambled to control the narrative. In the days that followed, the UIC launched a counter-propaganda campaign, attempting to discredit the rebels and dismiss the evidence as fabrications. They portrayed Lysandra and her followers as terrorists, using doctored footage and false testimonies. But the truth had already taken root, and it was proving difficult to uproot. Lysandra watched the UIC's broadcasts with a steely resolve. "They're desperate," she said, turning to Talon and Elle. "We need to keep the pressure on. Coordinate with our allies to keep the message alive. Every time they try to silence us, we'll come back stronger." Elle nodded, her fingers flying over her console. "I'm already on it. We've got hackers and media experts working around the clock to keep our channels secure and our message front and center." Talon added, "We're also stepping up security at all our bases. The UIC will likely try to strike back hard. We need to be ready." Despite the UIC's efforts, the tide was turning. The rebellion's message continued to spread, inspiring more people to rise against their oppressors. Lysandra received reports of uprisings on several planets, where citizens took to the streets, demanding freedom and justice. One evening, as Lysandra was reviewing the latest intelligence reports, a young rebel soldier entered the war room, her face flushed with excitement. "Commander Kade, you need to see this." Lysandra followed her to the communications center, where a live feed was being broadcast from a protest on the planet Epsilon Prime. Thousands of people had gathered, waving banners and chanting slogans in support of the rebellion. The UIC forces, overwhelmed and outnumbered, were retreating. "We did it," Lysandra whispered, a smile spreading across her face. "We actually did it." Elle, standing beside her, grinned. "This is just the beginning. We've shown the galaxy that the UIC can be challenged. Now we need to keep the momentum going." But even as they celebrated their successes, they knew the UIC would not give up easily. The coalition was a wounded beast, and it would lash out with all its might. Lysandra and her team prepared for the inevitable retaliation, fortifying their defenses and planning their next moves. The UIC's response came swiftly. An elite task force, led by Major Kane himself, launched a surprise attack on one of the rebel outposts. The assault was brutal and precise, leaving the outpost in ruins and many rebels dead or captured. The message was clear. The UIC was far from defeated. Lysandra gathered her surviving officers in the war room, their faces grim and determined. "We've taken a hit, but we won't be deterred. Major Kane wants to break our spirit, but all he's done is strengthen our resolve." Elle spoke up, her voice fierce. "We'll rebuild, we'll regroup, and we'll hit them back twice as hard." Talon nodded, his expression cold and calculating. "We need to stay one step ahead. Intelligence suggests they're planning more attacks. We need to anticipate their moves and strike preemptively." Dr. Calder added, "And we need to continue exposing their crimes. The more the galaxy knows about their true nature, the harder it will be for them to maintain control." Lysandra looked around at her team, feeling a surge of pride and determination. They had come so far, and despite the losses, they were stronger than ever. The UIC was on the defensive, and the flame of rebellion was spreading. "We'll mourn our losses and honor their sacrifice," Lysandra said. "But we won't let this setback stop us. The UIC may have the upper hand now, but we have something they can never take away, the will of the people, and with that, we will prevail." As the team set to work on their next plans, Lysandra felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battle or freedom was far from over, but they were gaining ground. And with each passing day, the dream of a galaxy free from the UIC's tyranny came closer to reality. The air was thick with anticipation as the rebels prepared for their next move. Lysandra Kade stood on a platform in the main hangar, addressing the gathered forces. Their recent successes had bolstered their ranks, and the hangar was now filled with new recruits eager to fight for freedom. "Today, we strike a blow that the UIC will not recover from," Lysandra began, her voice resonating through the space. "Our intelligence has revealed a major UIC supply depot on the planet Zenthara. It is heavily guarded, but if we can take it out, we will cripple their logistics and gain much-needed supplies." Elle, standing beside her, stepped forward. "We've devised a plan to infiltrate the depot. It involves a coordinated assault from multiple fronts, using both ground and air units. Timing and precision will be crucial." Lysandra nodded. "Captain Voss has agreed to lead the air assault. His experience and knowledge of UIC tactics will be invaluable." Captain Darius Voss, now fully integrated into the rebellion, gave a solemn nod. "I'll ensure our fighters take out their defenses and provide cover for the ground teams. We need to move quickly and decisively." Talon, who had been quietly observing from the side, stepped forward. "I'll lead the infiltration team. We'll plant charges at key points within the depot and disrupt their operations from the inside." Dr. Seraphine Calder added, "And I'll be ready to provide medical support and deal with any biological threats we might encounter." With the plan in place, the rebels moved out. The journey to Zenthara was tense, but filled with determination. The transport ships hummed with the quiet conversations of soldiers preparing for battle, their faces set with resolve. As they neared the planet, the ships split into their designated groups. Voss led the air units, their sleek fighters cutting through the atmosphere with deadly precision. The ground units, led by Lysandra and Talon, descended towards the supply depot, ready to engage the enemy. The assault began with a coordinated strike from the air. Voss's fighters swooped down, their blasters lighting up the sky as they took out the depot's anti-air defenses. Explosions rocked the ground, creating chaos and confusion among the UIC forces. "Ground teams, move in," Lysandra ordered, her voice steady and commanding. The rebels surged forward, engaging the UIC soldiers in fierce combat. Talon led his team through a series of underground tunnels, avoiding the main defenses and heading straight for the heart of the depot. The sound of blaster fire and explosions filled the air as the battle raged on. Inside the depot, Talon's team planted charges at strategic points, each explosion weakening the structure and disrupting the UIC's operations. They moved with precision, their training and Talon's guidance ensuring they met minimal resistance. As the fighting intensified, Lysandra and her squad found themselves pinned down by a heavy contingent of UIC soldiers. The situation looked dire, with casualties mounting and their advance stalled. "We need to break through their lines," Lysandra shouted, firing her blaster at the enemy. Just then, a familiar voice crackled through her comm. "This is Voss. We're bringing in reinforcements. Hold your position." Moments later, a squadron of rebel fighters swooped in, providing much-needed air support. The UIC soldiers were forced to retreat under the relentless assault, allowing Lysandra and her team to push forward. Talon's voice came through the comm next. "Charges are set. We're moving to the extraction point." "Understood," Lysandra replied. "All units, fall back to the extraction point. We're getting out of here." As the rebels regrouped and retreated, the charges detonated, causing a series of massive explosions that tore through the depot. The ground shook, and flames roared into the sky, a testament to the rebellion's determination and strength. The transport ships lifted off, carrying the victorious rebels away from the smoldering ruins of the depot. As they ascended, Lysandra allowed herself a moment of relief. They had struck a significant blow against the UIC, but the war was far from over. Back at the rebel base, the mood was celebratory, but tempered with the knowledge of the challenges ahead. The successful raid had boosted their morale, but they knew the UIC would not take this defeat lightly. In the war room, Lysandra gathered her key officers. "We've dealt a major blow to the UIC, but we can't let our guard down. They'll be coming for us with everything they have." Voss nodded. "They'll be desperate, and desperate enemies are the most dangerous. We need to fortify our defenses and prepare for their retaliation." Talon, leaning against the wall, added, "We also need to keep the momentum going. We can't afford to let them regroup and regain their strength." L, ever the optimist, grinned. "We've shown them that we're a force to be reckoned with. Now it's time to show the galaxy that the UIC isn't invincible." Dr. Calder, always the voice of caution, said, "We must also be mindful of the cost. Every victory comes with a price, and we need to support our people, both on the front lines and back home." Lysandra looked around at her team, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "We've come this far because we believe in what we're fighting for: freedom, justice, and a future without the UIC's tyranny. We will continue to fight, and we will win." As the meeting adjourned, Lysandra lingered in the war room, looking at the holographic display of the galaxy. The war was far from over, but they had reached a turning point. The flame of rebellion burned brighter than ever, and with every battle, they were one step closer to victory. Outside, the stars shone brightly, a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy and the many lives affected by their struggle. Lysandra knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but she was ready to face it with unwavering resolve. For the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of hope. The UIC was on the defensive, and the rebels were gaining ground. The future was uncertain, but it was a future they were fighting for, a future worth every sacrifice. As she left the war room, Lysandra knew that this was only the beginning. The rebellion was stronger than ever, and with each passing day, they drew closer to their ultimate goal, a galaxy free from the UIC's oppressive rule. The sun rose over the rugged mountains of Theron, casting long shadows across the rebel base. The mood was tense as Lysandra Kade walked through the bustling corridors. Reports had come in of a massive UIC fleet heading their way. The rebels had dealt significant blows to the UIC, but now the coalition was bringing the full weight of its forces to bear. In the war room, the atmosphere was thick with urgency. Lysandra stood at the head of the table, surrounded by her key officers: L, Dr. Seraphine Calder, Talon Jax, and Captain Darius Voss. "They're bringing everything they have," Voss said, his voice grim. "This is their attempt to crush us once and for all." Lysandra nodded. "We knew this day would come. We need to fortify our defenses and prepare for a siege. L, how are our defensive systems?" Elle leaned over the holographic display, her fingers flying over the controls. "I've reinforced our perimeter with automated turrets and energy shields. We've also set up a network of mines and traps in the surrounding terrain. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them down." Dr. Calder added, "I've prepared the medical bay for a large influx of casualties. We'll do our best to keep everyone alive, but our resources are limited." Talon, who had been listening, intently spoke up. "We also need to consider a contingency plan. If the base is overrun, we need to ensure that our most valuable assets, our people and our data, can be evacuated safely." Lysandra agreed. "We'll set up an evacuation route, but our primary goal is to hold this base. If we can withstand their assault, it will show the galaxy that the UIC can be resisted, even at their strongest." The rebels worked tirelessly throughout the day, preparing for the inevitable attack. Trenches were dug, barricades were erected, and every able-bodied person was armed and ready to defend their home. Lysandra moved among them, offering words of encouragement and support. She knew the coming battle would be their greatest challenge yet. As the sun set, the first signs of the UIC fleet appeared on the horizon. Dark, menacing shapes blotted out the stars, and the ground seemed to tremble with the approach of their massive warships. Lysandra stood on the battlements, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. "This is it," she said, turning to her officers. "Everyone to their positions. We fight for Theron, for the rebellion, and for the future of the galaxy." The UIC assault began with a barrage of artillery fire, pounding the rebel defenses. The ground shook, and explosions lit up the night sky. The rebels returned fire, their automated turrets and ground-based cannons taking a heavy toll on the attacking forces. But the UIC's numbers were overwhelming. Voss coordinated the air defenses, leading squadrons of rebel fighters in daring maneuvers to intercept the UIC bombers. El managed the ground defenses, directing the automated turrets and deploying mines to disrupt the enemy's advance. Dr. Calder and her medical team worked tirelessly in the underground medical bay, treating the wounded as fast as they arrived. Talon moved through the base, ensuring that the contingency plan was ready. He oversaw the loading of crucial data and supplies onto transport ships, preparing for the possibility of evacuation. The battle raged on for hours, each side sustaining heavy losses. The UIC forces pressed forward relentlessly, their superior numbers gradually wearing down the rebel defenses. Lysandra fought alongside her soldiers, her blaster cutting through the enemy ranks. She could feel the strain and exhaustion setting in, but she pushed on, driven by the determination to protect her people and their cause. As dawn approached, the situation grew dire. The UIC had breached the outer defenses, and their troops were pouring into the base. The rebels fought with desperate fury, but they were being pushed back, inch by inch. "We can't hold them much longer," Elle shouted over the comms, her voice strained. "We need to fall back to the inner defenses." "Do it," Lysandra ordered. "All units, fall back to the secondary perimeter. Hold the line at all costs." The rebels retreated to their last line of defense, a series of fortified bunkers and trenches around the core of the base. The UIC forces pressed their advantage, but the rebels held firm, determined not to give an inch. Amidst the chaos, Lysandra received a transmission from Talon. "Commander, the evacuation route is ready. We need to start moving our people and critical assets now." Lysandra hesitated. The thought of abandoning the base, their home, was almost unbearable. But she knew Talon was right. They had to ensure the survival of their key personnel and data. "Understood," she replied. "Begin the evacuation. I'll hold the line here as long as I can." Talon acknowledged the order and began coordinating the evacuation. Rebel soldiers and civilians alike were directed to the transport ships, carrying essential supplies and data cores. The process was slow and fraught with danger, as the UIC forces continued their relentless assault. As the last of the evacuees boarded the ships, Lysandra made her way to the command bunker, where her officers were gathered. "It's time," she said, her voice heavy with resolve. "We're evacuating. Let's move." The officers nodded, and together they made their way to the transport ships. The ground shook with the intensity of the battle, and the sky was ablaze with the fire of countless explosions. Just as they were about to board the final transport, a massive explosion rocked the base. Lysandra turned to see a UIC warship descending, its weapons trained on the transport ships. "They're targeting the evacuees," Dr. Calder shouted. "We need to buy them time," Voss said, his eyes fierce with determination. "I'll draw their fire." Before Lysandra could protest, Voss ran towards a nearby anti-aircraft gun and began firing at the warship. The warship turned its attention to him, giving the transport ships a crucial window to escape. "Voss, no!" Lysandra shouted, but it was too late. The warship unleashed a barrage of fire, engulfing the anti-aircraft gun in flames. As the transport ships lifted off, Lysandra watched in horror and sorrow. Voss's sacrifice had given them a chance, but the cost was immeasurable. The remaining rebels boarded the final transport, and they lifted off, leaving the smoldering ruins of their base behind. As they ascended into the sky, Lysandra looked out the viewport, her heart heavy with loss. The base was gone, but the rebellion was still alive. They had survived, and they would continue to fight. The transport ships made their way to a hidden rendezvous point where the remaining rebel fleet awaited. The mood was somber, but there was also a sense of determination. They had lost a battle, but the war was far from over. In the makeshift command center aboard the flagship, Lysandra addressed her officers. "We've suffered a great loss today, but we are still here. The UIC thought they could crush us, but they underestimated our resolve. We will regroup, we will rebuild, and we will continue to fight." Elle stepped forward, her eyes fierce with determination. "We'll make them pay for every life they've taken. We'll hit them harder than ever before." Dr. Calder added, "And we'll ensure that the galaxy knows the truth about the UIC's atrocities. We'll use every resource we have to expose their crimes." Talon, standing at the back of the room, spoke up. "And we'll be ready for them. We'll learn from this, adapt, and come back stronger." Lysandra nodded, feeling the strength of their unity. "We are the Aegis Rebellion, and we will not be broken. The UIC may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. Together, we will fight, and together, we will win." As the officers dispersed to carry out their duties, Lysandra stood alone for a moment, looking out at the stars. The future was uncertain, but she knew one thing for sure. The flame of rebellion still burned bright, and it would continue to light their path to freedom. With renewed resolve, she turned back to her team, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Siege of Theron had been a turning point, but it was only the beginning of their fight. The rebellion would rise again, stronger and more determined than ever. The rebel fleet floated in the cold expanse of space, hidden within an asteroid field that provided cover from UIC patrols. Lysandra Kade stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking out at the stars. The loss of their base on Theron weighed heavily on her, but she knew they had to keep moving forward. The information they had gathered from the destroyed UIC lab and the public outcry following their broadcasts had given them a chance, one final, desperate chance to strike at the heart of the UIC. In the war room, the atmosphere was charged with determination. Lysandra, Elle, Dr. Seraphine Calder, and Talon Jax were gathered around the holographic display, plotting their next move. "This is it," Lysandra said, her voice resolute. "We have one shot to end this war. The UIC's end command center is located on the planet Atria. If we can take it out, we can cripple their operations and force them to negotiate." Elle nodded, her eyes fixed on the holographic map. "Their defenses will be tight, but we've identified a weak point in their perimeter. If we can breach it, we can get a strike team inside." Dr. Calder added, "I'll coordinate the medical teams and ensure we're ready for any casualties. We can't afford to lose anyone at this stage." Talon, who had been silent, spoke up. "I'll lead the infiltration team. With my knowledge of their security systems, we can disable their defenses and create a path for the main assault force." Lysandra looked at each of them, feeling a surge of pride and determination. "This is our last chance. We need to give everything we have. For Theron, for all the colonies suffering under UIC rule, and for the future of the galaxy." The plan was set into motion. The fleet moved out, navigating through the asteroid field and heading towards Atria. The journey was fraught with tension, every member of the rebellion aware of the stakes. As they approached Atria, the fleet split into two groups. The main assault force, led by Lysandra, would engage the UIC's defenses head-on, drawing their attention and resources. Meanwhile, Talon's infiltration team would slip through the weak point in their perimeter and disable the command center's defenses from within. The battle began with a massive barrage from the rebel fleet. UIC warships engaged them immediately, and the space around Atria lit up with the flashes of blaster fire and explosions. Lysandra directed the assault from the bridge of the flagship, her commands precise and unyielding. "Focus fire on their capital ships," she ordered. "We need to break their lines and create an opening for the ground teams." Elle, piloting one of the lead fighters, coordinated the air assault, her voice crackling over the comms. "We've got their attention. Ground teams, move in now!" On the ground, Talon's team advanced through the perimeter, their movements swift and silent. They encountered heavy resistance, but Talon's knowledge of UIC protocols allowed them to bypass many of the security measures. They planted charges on key structures, creating a path of destruction that led straight to the command center. As they reached the heart of the UIC base, Talon accessed the central control room. His fingers flew over the console, disabling security systems and opening the gates for the main assault force. Lysandra, the path is clear, Talon reported. Bring in the main force. Understood. All units, move in, Lysandra commanded. The rebel forces surged forward, pouring into the breach created by Talon's team. The battle was fierce, with UIC soldiers fighting desperately to defend their command center. Lysandra led the charge, her blaster cutting through the enemy ranks with unrelenting precision. As they pushed deeper into the facility, Lysandra's thoughts turned to Captain Voss and his sacrifice. His memory fueled her determination, driving her to fight harder, faster. They reached the central command chamber, where the UIC's top officers were coordinating the defense. "Take them down," Lysandra shouted, her voice echoing through the chamber. The rebels stormed the room, engaging the UIC officers in close-quarters combat. Blaster fire filled the air, and the scent of ozone and smoke was thick. The fight was brutal, but the rebels' resolve was unbreakable. In the chaos, Lysandra spotted Major Kane, the architect of their suffering. Her eyes narrowed, and she advanced on him with deadly intent. "Kade," Kane sneered, drawing his blaster. "I should have killed you when I had the chance." "You'll regret that mistake," Lysandra replied coldly. They clashed in a fierce duel, their blasters and fists trading blows. Kane was a formidable opponent, but Lysandra's determination gave her the edge. Wit, a final, powerful strike. She disarmed him and pinned him to the ground. "It's over, Kane," she said, her voice filled with righteous fury. Kane laughed bitterly. "You think this will end the UIC? You're just delaying the inevitable." Lysandra's grip tightened. "Maybe, but we'll fight as long as we have to." With Kane subdued, the rebel forces quickly secured the command center. The UIC's defenses crumbled without their leadership, and the remaining soldiers surrendered or fled. The battle was over. In the aftermath, Lysandra stood in the ruins of the command center, her heart heavy with the cost of their victory. But as she looked around at her comrades, their faces filled with determination and hope, she knew it had been worth it. Talon approached, his expression serious but relieved. "We did it. The UIC's command structure is in shambles." L, covered in grime but grinning triumphantly, joined them. "And the galaxy saw it all. We've shown them that the UIC can be beaten." Dr. Calder, tending to the wounded, looked up and nodded. "This is just the beginning. We have a long road ahead, but we've taken a crucial step." Lysandra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their victory and the challenges still to come. "We've won a major battle, but the war isn't over. We need to keep pushing, keep fighting, until the UIC is no longer a threat to anyone." As the rebels regrouped and began to plan their next moves, Lysandra felt a sense of resolve settle over her. They had achieved the impossible, but their work was far from done. The UIC was wounded, but not defeated. But for now, they had won a significant victory, and the flame of rebellion burned brighter than ever. Lysandra knew they would continue to fight, to strive for a galaxy free from tyranny. The future was uncertain, but with their unity and determination, they would shape it into one of freedom and justice. As the sun set on Atria, casting a warm glow over the battlefield, Lysandra looked to the horizon with renewed hope. The final assault had been a success, and with each step forward, they moved closer to their ultimate goal, a galaxy where all could live free from oppression. The galaxy held its breath as the news of the UIC's defeat on Atria spread like wildfire. For the first time in years, the people felt a flicker of hope. The oppressive regime that had ruled their lives was on the brink of collapse. Lysandra Kade stood at the forefront of this change, her leadership and determination having steered the rebellion through its darkest times. The rebel fleet regrouped in orbit around Atria, the once mighty UIC command center, now a symbol of their triumph. On the bridge of the flagship, Lysandra addressed her team, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the holographic display. "We've dealt a crippling blow to the UIC, but we can't let our guard down," Lysandra began, her voice resolute. "They may be wounded, but they are still dangerous. Our task now is to consolidate our gains and ensure that the UIC cannot rise again." Elle stepped forward, her eyes shining with determination. I've already started coordinating with our allies across the galaxy. We're setting up provisional governments in liberated territories and providing aid to those who need it. The people are with us. Dr. Seraphine Calder added, we'll need to maintain a strong defensive stance while we rebuild. The UIC remnants will undoubtedly try to strike back, but we'll be ready. Talon Jax, his expression serious, spoke up. Our intelligence networks are in place. We'll monitor UIC movements and ensure they can't regroup. We've also captured key UIC officers who may provide valuable information. Lysandra nodded, feeling a sense of pride in her team. Good. We must stay vigilant, but we also need to think about the future. The galaxy will need strong leadership and a vision for what comes next. The war room erupted in a flurry of activity as plans were made and orders were given. The rebels moved swiftly to secure their positions, establish communication lines with their allies, and provide relief to the war-torn planets. Days turned into weeks as the rebels worked tirelessly to stabilize the liberated territories. Protests and uprisings had spread to even the most heavily controlled UIC planets, and the regime's remaining strongholds crumbled under the weight of the people's defiance. Lysandra found herself in constant communication with leaders from across the galaxy, forging alliances and setting the groundwork for a new era of cooperation and unity. The rebellion's leadership council, comprised of representatives from every major faction, convened regularly to discuss the future. In one such meeting, Lysandra addressed the council. We have fought long and hard for this moment, but our victory will be hollow if we do not build something better in its place. We must ensure that the new government is just, inclusive, and dedicated to the welfare of all its citizens. The council members nodded in agreement. L, representing the technical and logistics sectors, spoke passionately about the need for fair distribution of resources and technological advancements to rebuild the damaged infrastructure. Dr. Calder emphasized the importance of healthcare and education, ensuring that everyone had access to the basic necessities of life. Talon, who had earned the trust of many through his actions, proposed a comprehensive plan to dismantle the remaining UIC military capabilities and reintegrate their soldiers into society. We need to offer them a chance to rebuild their lives, he argued. Otherwise, we risk perpetuating the cycle of violence. The council's deliberations were long and complex, but they were driven by a shared vision of a better future. Slowly but surely, a new governance structure began to take shape, one that prioritized transparency, justice, and the well-being of all its people. One day, as Lysandra walked through the bustling corridors of the Provisional Government headquarters on Atria, she received a message from Talon. Commander, there's something you need to see. Lysandra followed Talon to a secure room where a UIC officer they had captured during the final assault was being held. The officer, a high-ranking member of the regime, had requested to speak with Lysandra personally. The officer, a woman named Alara Thorn, stood as Lysandra entered. Commander Kade, thank you for seeing me. Lysandra nodded curtly. What do you want, Thorn? Thorn's gaze was steady. I wish to offer my cooperation. The UIC is finished, but there are still elements that refuse to accept it. I can help you locate and dismantle these rogue factions. Lysandra considered her words carefully. Why should I trust you? Thorn's expression softened. Because I believe in what you're trying to build. The UIC lost its way, and I want to help make amends. I can provide valuable intelligence and assist in preventing further bloodshed. Lysandra studied her for a moment, then nodded. Very well, but understand this. Any betrayal will be met with swift and severe consequences. Thorn inclined her head. I understand, Commander. With Thorn's assistance, the rebels swiftly moved to neutralize the remaining UIC factions. The process was not without challenges, but the combined efforts of the rebellion and former UIC officers like Thorn ensured that peace was gradually restored. Months later, the galaxy stood on the brink of a new era. The provisional government had laid the foundation for a democratic and inclusive system. Elections were held, and representatives from every corner of the galaxy were chosen to lead the new United Galactic Federation, UGF. On the day of the inauguration, Lysandra stood before a crowd of millions on Atria, the capital of the UGF. The people cheered and waved banners, their faces led with hope and joy. Lysandra addressed the assembly, her her voice strong and clear. Today we stand united, not as rebels, but as free citizens of a new galaxy. We have fought for our freedom, and now we must work to protect and nurture it. Together, we will build a future where every voice is heard and every life is valued. The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the city. Lysandra felt a swell of emotion, knowing that they had achieved something truly remarkable. After the ceremony, Lysandra joined her closest allies, Dr. Calder, Talon, and others, for a moment of quiet reflection. They stood on a balcony overlooking the city, the sun setting on the horizon. "We did it," Elle said, her voice filled with wonder. "Yes, we did," Lysandra replied, a smile spreading across her face. "But this is just the beginning. We have a lot of work ahead of us." Dr. Calder nodded. "And we'll face it together, just as we always have." Talon, looking out at the horizon, added, "For the first time in a long while, I feel hopeful about the future." Lysandra placed a hand on his shoulder. "So do I, Talon, so do I." As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Lysandra and her friends looked out at the galaxy they had fought so hard to free. The UGF was a beacon of hope, a testament to their courage and determination. The road ahead would not be easy, but they were ready to face it together. With the dawn of a new era, the flame of rebellion had transformed into a guiding light for the galaxy. And as long as that light burned, they knew they would never be alone.